What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose, the second episode of the week, going over the big game this weekend. Hopefully, a good game. Iowa taking on Michigan in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship. Can Iowa somehow find a way? It would be arguably the biggest win in a very long time for Iowa football. It'd be the first win for a Big Ten West team in the Big Ten championship game. It would definitely create some chaos in the college football playoff rankings. It'd be unbelievable. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So on this episode today, I got Tyler here once again. We are going to go over that game a little bit. We're going to get into the college football playoff rankings and kind of how we see it kind of shape up, because this weekend there could be a lot of different things that happen that can determine the Final Four. We'll look at the other conference championship games, and we'll just kind of go from there. So what's going on, Tyler? How's your week going? We're recording this on Wednesday night, so a few nights before the big game. But how are you doing, man?
Doing good. Man, it's Big Ten championship week. I'm so excited. Obviously, I'm excited to finally, watch them in Indy. You're going to the game,
Yep,
which
I'm excited.
maybe you'll talk about, but I'm not going to the game. You're going with some family. I'm jealous. Regardless of the outcome, it's just always a great experience. And I mean, I've never been there, so I'm sure it's a great
Yeah,
experience.
you can still come.
A couple times.
We still have room for you, man.
I gotta work. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, yeah, it would be the biggest win in my lifetime that I could think of. Obviously, we haven't won a Big Ten championship that I believe since I've been following the Hawks, and you know, I don't think we're gonna win, but we just with given everything that's gone on, and we'll talk about it. But I'm hoping for a good game. That's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I think right now, as we stand on DraftKings, we are a 22-point underdog. And so just looking at that, like if we found a way to win, I mean, just on that aspect, yeah, it's a huge upset. And but once again, it's going to take a lot. I think for the majority of people, if you asked a lot of people, most people probably assume it's going to be a blowout. For me, I'm not even trying to be negative, but I mean, I kind of assume that. Now, I'm as a fan, I am like hopeful that we can put up a fight. I'm hopeful that, maybe we could find a way to win. I mean, that's just the fan inside me. But I think deep down, kind of the gut is telling you kind of what we kind of expect. You look at the last couple of times we played Michigan. We played Michigan last year in Kinnick, and for the most part, it wasn't really like a Michigan blowout. We ended up losing. What was the final score of that game? 27. I know we kind of came back towards the end to kind of make it a game a little bit, but I think we lost by maybe 2 possessions. I would take that on Saturday, honestly. Like even if you told me right now, like, hey, we're not going to win, but we're not going to get blown out. We're going to keep it kind of respectable. I would absolutely love that. But 2021, obviously, we played them in the Big Ten championship game. And I'm going to ask you this question here soon. Actually, I could ask you it now. Do you think Iowa's roster this year is better than Iowa's roster in 2021? Because in 2021, we obviously got blown out by Michigan. Now, if you don't recall that game, that first drive, we actually went right down the field and we tried to do a trick play. And if we could have capitalized on that, and then we ended up missing the field goal. And after that missed field goal, you knew this is game. I mean, that was our chance to put up some points, make it interesting in the first quarter, and we couldn't even do that. And that game was over. I know they did that trick play where I think it was maybe Donovan Edwards. Yeah. And it was just game. Now, I would say Michigan's team this year is better than probably their team in 2021. But do you think Iowa's team this year is better than the team in 2021?
Are we talking about the current roster, given all the injuries?
Current roster, given all the injuries. Because I think if we didn't have these injuries, if we had Cade, if we had Cooper, 100% this year's team is better than 2021. But with the injuries,
who do we have at wide receiver that year? That's what I'm trying.
We would have had. I can't think of his name. Went to Purdue. Charlie Jones.
Oh yeah,
Tyrone Tracy. Keegan Johnson. I mean, we had
Yeah.
decent. Now the offensive line that year was brutal. I would definitely pick
Yeah.
this offensive line. I
It's
think,
tough. I think it's close for me. I I would. It was Spencer Petras at quarterback, right?
yeah, which you could almost maybe compare apples
It's
to apples with him
yeah,
and Deacon. I mean, like, I would say they're about the same.
yeah.
I mean, really, if you really think about it.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of that roster and like as a whole. And I
Yep.
mean, I thought we had a good team that year, a really good team, but I I don't know. I'm not confident in saying this, but I think if we had all of our players healthy, this year's I would say by far and away. But with the injuries, I would go probably the previous roster.
Yeah.
That's my
I would say like for me, for sure, the offensive line is better this year than in
yeah
2021, which obviously helps a lot. I just remember that year O-line was horrible, and we had to go up against Aiden Hutchinson, and
yeah
I forgot what the other guy's name was on the other side, and it was just
yeah.
horrible. Like we couldn't do anything. So, and then obviously the last time we made Indy was in 2015. I really couldn't believe that it went 6 years before we made it back to Indy. Just given how the Big Ten West
Yeah.
hasn't been that great the last decade. And so, but in 2015 we did make it, and we played Michigan State, which when you really think about it, we line up so well with Michigan State. That game I think ended up being what was it, 13-16. We should have won that game. That last drive by Michigan State that lasted like almost 10 minutes. That was such a gut punch, so heartbreaking. I went to that game, and I obviously went in 2021, and I'd rather take a blowout than the way that game ended in 2015, where you get that Tavon Smith long ball.
Feel so good.
Yup. You really feel like, wow, we are going to do it. We are going to do it.
Punch.
We're going to make it to the Rose Bowl. Actually, no, we would have
yeah.
made it to the college football playoff. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And
we were 12-0 that year.
Yeah. And man, like, it was so bad.
I was watching on my TV at home, and I just couldn't believe the amount how long that drive was. That was insane.
Yeah. So that was really bad. But yeah, no Big Ten West team has ever won a Big Ten championship since they've obviously done the East and West. And for Iowa, the last time we've won an outright conference championship was 2004, when Iowa went 10-2 and 7-1. And obviously that was, way before they started doing the championship games the week after the season ends. Because at that time there was no divisions and there was just no conference championship. So it was essentially whoever won the regular season won the Big Ten title. So, but yeah, so let's maybe third time's the charm. We've only been there twice. This is the third time the charm, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's like, I'm just to the point where, and this is kind of going back to like the Penn State game. I remember when we were down in Phoenix and we were kind of saying the same thing. Just, can we keep it respectable? Because I think if we could do that, I will take it. I think Iowa's on its way to, with the loss to the Citrus Bowl, which I think is a great bowl. I mean, that's the next best bowl outside of the New Year's Six, and you'd be playing a really good SEC team. So talk about a way better matchup compared to the last 2 years. Last 2 years sucked. Playing Kentucky 2 years in a row, kind of shitty bowl games.
Kind of a not great bowl game.
2 years ago was Citrus Bowl, but we played Kentucky.
And then because it's not a great bowl game, nothing to really play for. Guys sit out.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I hate about it. But yeah.
Now, if you find a way to win on Saturday, you obviously make it to a New Year's Six Bowl, which would be pretty cool. But that would, once again, asking for a lot.
If we won, I would. If we somehow won that game, it would just infuriate me about the Minnesota game, because then you're talking potential playoff.
Yep.
So I mean, obviously I want to win. I'm just saying that would bring up the history of the Minnesota game, which would drive me insane.
Yeah. So how do we win on Saturday? Like what would you say needs to happen for us to even have a chance in this game?
Deacon Hill has to have the greatest game of his life, which is very tough to do against the number one scoring defense of the country in Michigan. He's going to have to played perfect football. And I don't believe he's capable of doing that. And that's where it starts. Because we're not going to be able to run the ball effectively against Michigan. I don't see it. And I think they're going to force Deacon Hill to beat them, which why wouldn't they? Like most teams. It's going to take, honestly, it's going to take Michigan not having their best day to be, if that's like the best answer I can give you, that's me being completely honest. Michigan has to be off on Saturday, whether it's JJ throwing a few picks. Excuse me. He doesn't look very good. Corum fumbles it and we get a touch, scoop and score. Defense gets a defensive touchdown or special teams makes a huge play. Like it is going to take all the other things, in my opinion, like the special teams, our defense, and them not having a great day to give us a chance in the fourth quarter. Just because I just don't. That, and like I said, Deacon Hill has to have the best game of his life, and some receivers are going to have to step up. I just don't know, like, if that's possible. That's how I see it.
I really think our defense can go toe to toe with Michigan's offense, but the problem is going back to like the Penn State game was if you didn't watch that game, you'd be like, wow, our defense didn't do anything. Like we looked like shit. But if you really think about it, we were out there for 90 some plays because our offense was so bad that day. Our defense had no chance to regroup, to get rested.
Big Ten championship game. Like we had a great defense that year, but it doesn't show it because exactly they're out there so much.
You have a better offense. The defense isn't out there for so long, but
correct.
Offensively for me, it's like, this is one thing that like, we don't really talk about ever because we don't really assume it, but it's like, man, like it happens so much with Iowa. Drop balls. Like, can we catch the balls that are thrown to these guys? I mean, you go back to last game, Nico had 2 drop balls, both of which would result in first downs. That moves the drive. Caleb Brown, a drop ball that would have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something, like I said, it doesn't get talked about ever. You kind of forget about it until it actually happens. But man, like that's like one of my keys. It's like, don't drop balls. Like if the ball is thrown to you, you are a D1 wide receiver. And if it's a good enough pass, you have to catch those, especially this week when you're playing in a dome and you have no weather. It's not cold. There's no precipitation. There's no wind.
Yeah.
So catch the damn ball. You already know Deacon's going to have a turnover because that's just who he is. And the problem is how many turnovers, because my worst fear is he's going to have some interceptions or maybe even just one interception. But then my other fear is he's going to fumble once or twice, staying in the pocket. Michigan's good defense when they do a blitz or something and he's going to fumble it. And man, like those things happen. Like you might as well just call it a day at that point because we're not going to be able to come back from that.
No. And to be honest, I think also because we just haven't been able to do it, and really it's all year. I'm not just saying in this game, but can we get off to some sort of like fast start? Can we get off to a quick, like the Big Ten championship? Like you said, we were driving. We should have scored right away, and then of course we don't, and then the whole script flips and the game turns in that whole sequence. It's like put that pressure on Michigan. We have nothing to lose in this game, Collin. Absolutely nothing. No. We're 20, what'd you say, 22 and a half?
Right now we're at 22, but obviously 22? That's going to, changes.
Yeah. So it's like one of the largest spreads for a championship game. It's also like one of the lowest over-unders, I think, obviously due to good defense and Iowa's offense. Put the pressure on Michigan. I don't know what we have to do, but I think if we come out and we look like we did in that second half against Nebraska, boy, oh boy, we're in for a long day. So we've got to find a way, because I'm assuming we're going to get the ball, whether Michigan defers or we receive like we normally do if we win the toss. Find a way to get some points, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. Get on the board early, put a little pressure on Michigan, and then, you can lean on that defense, our defense. So I think that's a big key as well.
Yeah, Nebraska
getting yourself into a hole. Like
that Nebraska game, we had 2 drives where we were in prime position to score something. We didn't score anything.
Yeah.
That happens again. Yeah, you might as well call it a day. You go back to 2021, like you mentioned, and I said earlier, yeah, we got 3 and out to start the game because they actually got the ball right away. Get 3 and out, and then we go right down the field, and we should have put up something, at least 3 points and nothing. And yeah, that's like at that point you knew like that's not going to be our night. Penalties obviously huge because once again, like we get a holding call or a false start or something. It's pretty much a drive killer at that point. You might as well just bring out Torrey Taylor. I wish we had Cooper in this game because I would say maybe we can get a punt return. Maybe that can be our ticket to it being at least closer than maybe what it will be or whatever the case may be. Defensively, and I sent this to you on Monday, and I said we can talk about this on Wednesday night, but an Ohio State guy tweeted JJ's grades when he's blitzed this year, and with Connor Stallions, obviously the sign stealing guy or whatever, his grades were actually pretty good. But ever since, without Connor Stallions, his grades, according to PFF, has not been good. And I sent to you, okay, if this is the case, we got to blitz a lot. His grade against Ohio State was a 44 when blitzed, and then Maryland was right around there as well, which would make it, his last 2 games really bad when he blitzed. And like the Ohio State guy said, unfortunately, Ohio State only blitzed him 4 times, which makes 0 sense. So, if that's the key, you got to do that then. But the problem, though, this is what I'm afraid of. You blitz him, kind of like we did against Nebraska, and then we're going to leave a guy wide open. And that's another
one. And
yep, that's another point that I'm going to make too. If it's 3rd and long, we cannot give up like we did against Nebraska. How many did we count again? 4 or 5?
Yeah.
3rd and 10-ish plays that ended up being first downs and one of them being a touchdown. I mean, can't do that. Got to get off the field if it's 3rd and long. I mean, that's something that just pains me. Is when it is a 3rd and 10 or a 3rd and 11 or whatever,
right? And
teams get a first down from that. It's like, no, it just can't happen. Feels like it happens a lot with Iowa, but it especially happened a lot last week.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to your point with the defense, like this is where it's going to be like so unfair for the defense, right? In terms of our expectations, but they're going to have to like play amazing, right?
Yep.
Like they cannot give up anything deep. They're going to have to make Michigan earn everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it starts with stopping, Blake Corn, Donovan Edwards, because everything's predicated off their run game. Like,
yeah.
And if they don't have, if we can somehow contain both of them, then, you put JJ in that spot, where, he's going to have to be the one to make a play. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to do it. The guy just won for the best quarterback award in the Big Ten. So he's obviously capable, but to me, you can't let him do everything, right? You got to take away something. And I think trying to stop the run and making them earn everything will be a huge, huge key. We also have to somehow, I know I just said it's going to be very hard to run against them, but I think we're going to have to try to find a way to do it as well. Because if we put it all on Deacon, that is also not a great recipe. So
you might disagree with me on this, and people probably listening might disagree with me on this, but I think Michigan is better than Penn State clearly. But I still think the Penn State game, given the atmosphere of that game, the whiteout at night, remember it was rainy. I still think that's a tougher. I think that's still a tougher game than this game, just given the atmosphere and everything around it, the environment. I don't know if you remember, it was raining. But Michigan clearly is a better team than Penn State. But I think that game earlier in the year was so much harder. But if you go back to that Penn State game, man, like even that game, like we shot ourselves in the foot like numerous times at the beginning of the game. We were driving, Eric all fumbles. I still don't know how we didn't get on top of that fumble because we had like 4 or 5 guys by the football. But we fumble. We don't get anything out of that drive. That could have been 3 or 7 points. We get a defensive stand, and then we get a ball that gets hit by one of our players on the punt, and then they get the ball right back. And that, especially on the road in a night game, wide out, you might as well, once again, it's not our night. And I remember saying that when we were down in Phoenix, like, this just isn't our night. Like, not like if those things didn't happen, we would have won. I'm not saying that. But you can't tell me that if those things don't happen, it's at least a little closer. So
Yeah.
we just can't let those things happen. We just can't. And for me, you said it 5 minutes ago, we have nothing to lose. This is Brian's second to last game. Draw up some aggressive plays. Just do something that's just kind of out of the ordinary. And if it doesn't work, whatever, it's fine. We're 22.5-point dogs. This is your second to last game. Who cares? Do something that's kind of risky and just see what happens. You go back 2 years ago, we did a halfback throw to our fullback, just something different. Now, did it work? No. And, it sucks that it didn't work, but if it would have worked, that's huge. I mean, Michigan was not prepared for that. So do something like that. Michigan's going to do it. There's a couple trick plays on, under Jim Harbaugh's hand. We saw it in 2021. It's probably going to happen again on Saturday. So can we be the aggressive type? Can we come out being aggressive like we did against USC in 2019 or Ohio State in 2017? Now, this offense is not as good as those 2 years because I thought, Nate Stanley and some of our wide receivers and stuff like that. But we were at least aggressive those nights. Can we be a little bit aggressive like that? So, but yeah, let's just end it here with that game. Your prediction.
Oh man. As much as I want, and I'm not going to sit up here and predict us to win the game. I think think that'd be naive of me. That would be kind of unrealistic of me, even though I would love to sit up here and call it an upset. The problem is I've seen Michigan against now Ohio State look pretty damn good on offense. That's like the number one versus number two defense. And we have a great defense, but even Ohio State has like the number two defense, and they were able to still put up, what was it, 20 something against them?
Yeah.
So I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like it would be, like I said, unrealistic of me to predict a win, but I don't know. I fear my fear is Deacon in this game. Like I've got that bad feeling that he is gonna have a couple of turnovers and it's gonna be really detrimental to anything that we're trying to get going on offense.
Yep.
And it's not really his fault. You're playing against a great defense. You haven't been in this spot. You weren't supposed to be in this spot. He hasn't looked great against, some of the Big Ten West teams. What makes me think he's going to look great against Michigan? I'm going to go 34-10, a loss. We do not cover. I say we get into the end zone once, but it's going to be tough sledding all day. I really think our defense will play their hearts out. I don't think they're going to be the ones to blame for giving up 34 points. I think it's going to be a lot of our offensive struggles being that reason.
Yep. I look at the last month for Michigan. So there was 2 games in particular. I'm looking at 2 kind of inferior teams because obviously they played Penn State and Ohio State in November. I'm looking at the Purdue game. They won 41-13. So they gave up Purdue, who is not a very good team, gave up 41 points. And then Maryland gave up 31. I would like to think our defense is way better than both of those teams. And so 30-ish points is kind of what I was kind of thinking too, just looking at those 2 scores. And actually probably less than that, but I'm fully expecting a stupid turnover by our offense that's going to lead to an easy touchdown. Correct. So that's why I'm going to go 31. I think if our offense was not inept like they are, that maybe we could hold them to 20-ish points.
Right.
Ohio State gave up 30, but if you take away their turnover, remember the interception at the beginning of the game that set them up at the 10-yard line? So, you take away that, they put up 23 points. So I would like to think that we could, but I already know something stupid's going to happen. So I'm going to go 31 and I'm going to go 6. For me, it's just so hard to envision a touchdown at this point. Now, obviously, if, certain things have to happen for me or for us, I feel like, to score a touchdown. I think we'll get inside at least a couple times for a field goal, but that's about it. I don't know. I hope I'm dead wrong at that point. I don't think, we don't cover at that point either. 31-6, kind of the score of the Penn State Iowa game, essentially, but I'm giving us at least 6 points instead of no points in the Penn State game. Yeah. So I don't know. Hopefully we're both wrong.
Like you said, if we somehow win this game, it's probably the biggest game of my life that I've seen.
It is good that, 4 guys that were kind of questionable are all practicing so far this week, and that's Caleb Brown, Deontay
Yeah.
Vines, Logan Jones, and Jennings Dunker. So if you could take any positives going into this game, that's huge. I mean, obviously, like for me, definitely like Caleb Brown, because even though he had a drop pass last week, he's definitely by far our best offensive threat. I mean, you
Yeah.
can give him the ball in terrible situations, and he's going to find a way. Like that one Nebraska play where he got that, it was a wide receiver screen, should have been blown dead at the line of scrimmage. He ended up getting like 10, 15 yards out of it. I don't know how he did.
Yeah.
So huge that he's back, and hopefully he can stay healthy for this game. It's big that we got Deontay Vines back, even though he hasn't really done much. Just having him, I guess, an extra body is good. So, yeah. But all right, well, let's move on then. Let's just hope for the best. That's all we're gonna say. And
Real quick though, you made a good point about Brian. Like I know he's got 2 games left. And he's going to be done. But man, if he can at least call a good game, a creative game, that gives us some sort of chance, right?
Yep, exactly.
So that's a good point by you.
So let's move on to the college football playoff rankings that came out yesterday. You see Iowa, they moved up 1 spot after moving back a spot last week, which at the time I was kind of mad about that. But the more I thought about it, I mean, they go week by week. And the way I thought the committee looked at it was, okay, number one, we just lost our best player in Cooper DeJean. And we struggled at home against Illinois. Probably should have lost that game. So I could see why, the more I think about why they moved us back 1 spot.
Yeah.
And then this week we obviously won again, kind of a tough game. And so it doesn't surprise me that we only went up 1 spot. Honestly, I thought maybe we would stay probably at 17. So I was actually kind of surprised by that. But you look at these, I would say the first thing is Oregon, Washington. You could probably cancel out. Whoever wins that game is going to make it.
Yeah.
And that for me, it's like kind of goes to show like that game back in October, it doesn't matter because it's all about recency bias. So it's like, who cares if you lose that game? As long as you win the game in the Big Ten or in the conference championship game, you're going to make it, which kind of sucks. So like for Washington, they took care of business in the regular season. They beat Oregon already, but if they lose to Oregon this weekend, it doesn't matter. They're probably out. Okay. Now, Florida State, for me, this is my problem with them. Now, obviously with their quarterback getting hurt, but I do feel like if they do win on Saturday, they deserve to be in it, because if going 12-0 and then 13-0, you deserve to be in at that point. I mean, I'm sorry, as much as I don't want to see them in it, because it's like they have a backup quarterback and like they struggle against Florida. They put up like what Iowa does. I think they had like 220 total yards. It's like, do I really want to see them going up against like a number 1 Georgia or number 2 Michigan? Not really, but I think they deserve to be in it. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's weird because like I've been listening to like a lot of these guys who talk college football, like their opinions on the rankings and how it should all play out or whatever. And I can't remember if it's like, so 2 things, like Kirk Herbstreit was saying, he's like, the goal like for the committee is to put the 4 best teams in, right? Like we got away from the BCS system. We got away from all the equations or whatever to figure out who the best team is. We're picking the 4 best teams. Probably Florida State isn't one of the 4 best teams. Like you said, quarterback goes down. Obviously, a backup quarterback in now. Obviously, haven't been playing very, very well since then. So, like, but at the same time, I'm looking at it from Iowa's perspective. If we were that team, we were 12-0. We have a backup quarterback. We didn't look great. We survived and we went 12-0. But there was a lot of close games, maybe a game where we should have lost, but we won, whatever. I would be sitting up here being like, oh my God, we're undefeated. How are we not in it? So I agree with you. Like, man, to go undefeated, it's still really hard. And I think that they should probably be in.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at, like, again, I look at it from Iowa's perspective. I'd be saying the same thing, right? I'd be lying if I said if it were the case for Iowa, I would say we should be in as well. The other thing, interesting, really quick, you mentioned the Oregon Washington State, and I totally agree with you. I think the winner of that is in. What's funny, and people have brought this up, it's like Texas is kind of getting screwed, because if Texas wins the Big 12 with 1 loss, Oregon wins the Pac-12 with 1 loss, Texas has a better win in
And
Alabama. Oregon's worst loss is Washington State earlier in the year, or which is still a
yeah,
good loss, but you know what I mean? Like they lost to that team earlier. Texas's strength of schedule is way harder than Oregon's, yet the committee loves Oregon this year. That's why it's all like, I don't know. Like, does some of this stuff really even matter if they're just trying to pick the 4 best teams? Like, I don't know.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I'm kind of at. It's like, how do you?
That's the problem with
So
4 teams, in my opinion, though.
so Ohio State, like what would it take for them to get in?
I it's very, very unlikely, but I can't remember exactly what has to happen. They have to
Doesn't
hope
like
Alabama has to lose.
okay, yep, Alabama has to lose for sure.
Florida State has to
Florida
lose to
State. But then
Louisville.
but wouldn't Texas jump them then if they beat Oklahoma
See,
State? So they
so
need Texas to lose then, right?
correct. They need Texas to lose, Florida State to lose, and I believe Alabama to lose.
Wow. Okay, here's another
It's pretty
thing.
tough, but there's still a path.
Let's say Alabama wins. Would a one-loss Georgia make it?
All hell breaks loose if Alabama wins.
Because Alabama obviously deserved at that point, but would Georgia stay in? So I think this year might be the one year where they don't. Most years, I think Georgia would be in regardless because they're so dominant.
Here's the problem. People would be like, well, Alabama deserves to be in now because they have the best win against anybody in the country, number one, Georgia. But then Texas is saying, hey, we beat you early in the year. Doesn't head-to-heads matter too? If Texas were to win, their chance. Like I said, if Alabama wins, all hell breaks loose.
Is there a chance to, this is another like hypothetical, if Oregon beats Washington, but it's such a close game, like maybe overtime win or like maybe a 3-point win, would Washington, a one-loss Washington team, still stay in and maybe have 2 Pac-12s? I don't think they will do that, but like that's another thing that could happen.
I don't think they will just because Washington has struggled against some of their weaker opponents in their conference. Like they had close wins against which Arizona is not bad this year, but like Arizona State, Washington State just came down to the end. Like, I don't think that they would have to win, I think. Yeah, they would have to win.
For me, this is my dream playoff. Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Texas. That would be I think that is you're getting a team kind of in each kind of pod of the country. Yep. You're talking some teams that you haven't seen for a while, Texas, Oregon, and I would just love to see that. You would have a Georgia Texas matchup and a Michigan Oregon. Give me that.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah,
and I agree. I think like as much as I really like Washington and their offense, like man, I just don't think they have the defense.
No,
like I think Oregon's the more complete team, and that's why they are too favored by a decent amount in this game.
That's why my wishes for this weekend is Louisville beats Florida State, Oregon beats Washington, Texas takes care of business against Oklahoma State, and we're good to go. Georgia wins. Obviously, it would be nice for Iowa to knock out Michigan. And as an Ohio State fan, Ohio State's probably going to be cheering for us because they're going to hope for that. Because I think if, let's just say we beat Michigan, let's just say there's that chance. Obviously, that's such a bad loss for Michigan that I think Ohio State would maybe jump in. But I do think as of right now, even though Ohio State's ahead of Texas, I still think when it's all said and done, Texas is technically ahead of Ohio State because they're going to win their conference championship this week. And I think that's going to compel them over Ohio State, in my opinion.
They have to have Texas lose. Ohio
State
does.
Yep. Someone made a good point. Big Ten did themselves dirty with doing divisions because if they didn't do divisions, it would be another Michigan-Ohio State rematch where it would give kind of a guaranteed, like, a Big Ten team's going to make it guaranteed. Because even if Michigan somehow loses this week to Iowa, that doesn't necessarily mean Ohio State's going to be inserted back in. So,
well, that's why they're talking about how, and like the flip side too, it's like that's why this year, with it only being 4 teams, that's why the quote unquote the game drew. I don't know if you saw 19 million viewers because of how important this game.
It was almost like a playoff game. Yeah,
it was. The winner, essentially is playing Iowa, so theoretically you're gonna win, and you're in. So come next year, that game, if say they're both undefeated, that game doesn't mean that much with 12 teams, right? It's only for seeding at that point because you're gonna be playing each other again the following week if they're both undefeated. I'm saying I know there's gonna be new teams in the conference, all that. I'm just saying hypothetically speaking, they'll be playing each other in the conference championship game. And, again, you could probably, if you're Ohio State or Michigan, I mean, maybe lose twice to the same team and still make a playoff. Like, I don't know.
Yep. One other thing too, I think, just talking, obviously we really talk Big Ten. I mean, Penn State probably guaranteed New Year's Six Bowl at number 10, which they deserve that. They only have 2 losses this year. And then honestly, kind of a game that no one's going to talk about, but that Tulane versus Liberty game, which might be better. I think those 2 teams play this week. I'm almost positive in their conference championship.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And whoever wins that game is going to get to a New Year's Six Bowl because they will be the best group of 5 teams. So that's actually a bigger game than people think. I think that's going to be a good game. I kind of forget about that game. I think the best. And we'll talk about it here soon. I was going to say something, but I'm going to wait.
I think I know where.
Yeah. And this is just per Vegas, the odds to make it. And we've kind of what we hit on. Ohio State probably has the least chance. Washington, I think they're just expecting Washington to lose this weekend, which rightfully so. But Michigan obviously has the best chance. So,
let me say this really quick. If Texas and say Alabama wins and Texas wins, there is no way in hell Alabama should jump Texas.
Oh, no, especially because, they lost to them. That doesn't make any sense.
If that somehow happens, then clearly regular season games don't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like why even schedule
these games? So if the committee somehow does that, I know like people are like talking about it, and it's like it's all the SEC homers that like talk college football. They're like, oh, well, they have the best win. Of course, they should still jump Texas. Yeah, that game was so long ago. No, stop it. Stop it. Yeah. I would be so pissed.
Seriously, yeah. I saw something about that too, where it's like, yeah, that would suck. Going to this, I saw this. I sent this to you, but this would be if it was like next year, what it would look like with 12 teams. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this. If not, man, like you got some great matchups. Like if the season ended today, come next year, you would have Texas, Penn State played at Texas, which I love how like they're going to be on college campuses. You have Ohio State, Ole Miss, Oregon, Tulane, Alabama, Missouri. And then obviously the winners of those games would play Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and Georgia. So next year, we'll talk about, the top 12, but the top 4 is still going to matter because they get a bye week. So it's still going to be like kind of like that every week, that the talking point, okay, who's the top 4 teams? Because that's such a huge advantage getting that bye week.
Yep.
So, like for this year,
which is good because that still incentivizes you to keep winning throughout the season and everything like that. So
I'm so excited for this. I am so excited for the 12-team playoff.
How is this not a thing right now? Like, this year there's so much parity in college football, man. Yes. And like, I just wish this was this year. I really do. People
hate the transfer portal. People hate NIL, but I think it's creating more parity in college football. Yeah. And I think every year it's going to be sort of like TCU. This because every team, last year just out of nowhere
won the portal, got a lot of guys in the transfer portal. Had a lot of guys come back and look at them. They made it.
Yeah, look at Washington. Look at Missouri. Look at a lot of these teams. So, all right, let's go into the conference championship games real quick. This is my favorite. This is a game I'm looking forward to the most. This is what I was going to say before. Game I'm looking forward to the most. Washington, Oregon. 2 teams that are obviously really good. Lived up to the hype the first time around. I think they played back in October, middle of October. Oregon currently a 9.5-point favorite, which kind of just goes to show you. Vegas thinks Oregon's a way better team than Washington, which as of late, they have looked like they are a way better team. So I'm curious. We just go through like what we kind of think the picks are going to be. Who do you think wins this game?
I think Oregon wins this game. Just like you said, the way that they've been playing, the fact that their defense has gotten better. Bo Nix he could win a Heisman this year. His completion percentage is just outrageous at like 78%. He's balling. And Washington's offense is really, really good. I just think that game was in Seattle, which gave them the edge in that game because Oregon played really well too. I mean, they lost the last second. This is going to be a neutral site. I think the edge is to Oregon.
Yeah, I would say probably edge to Oregon as well. If I was a betting man, I would probably take Oregon minus 9.5. But if that number got to like 10.5, I'd probably take Washington. But I don't know. Yep. Texas, Oklahoma State.
Are we picking winners or spreads? Sorry.
Winners for sure, which we both are going to probably take.
That's what I was. Yeah. Because 9.5 is still a lot of points, I think.
Yeah, it is. Texas, Oklahoma State, man, like I really wish this would have been a Oklahoma versus Texas game. Oklahoma State, man, you look at like their 2 losses this year, or 3 losses. They lost to Iowa State, but they lost Alabama State at home 33-7 and UCF 45-3. And they're in the conference championship game, which is just unbelievable. But here we are. Texas, a much better team. This should be an easy win for them. I'm sure Oklahoma State will give it its all, kind of like Iowa's going to give it its all against Michigan. But more than likely, should be a easy win for Texas.
Yeah, 100% agree. And like Oklahoma State, I mean, they're really lucky. Last week they played BYU. They were down like 24-6.
Yeah,
and
BYU's a
in
bad
double
team.
overtime to get to this championship game. Yeah. Like what Oklahoma State team shows up? I think the running back's like a stud. I think he leads the country in rushing. But Texas's defense and obviously Quinn Ewers in the offense, I think they should win pretty comfortably.
If I'm Oklahoma, I'm still so mad at that non-pass interference call they didn't call in that game. God. Georgia, Alabama. I think this is going to be a great game. It always is. It's always just a good, SEC championship game is always competitive. Georgia's a 5.5 point favorite.
Yeah, it's crazy because Alabama's peaking at the right time. They're playing a lot better. But to be on top, you got to beat the team on top. And I just haven't seen Georgia lose in 2 years. I think Georgia wins this game. I could see it coming down to the end. I could see it coming down to maybe like even like a field goal or a late touchdown.
Yep.
I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I do too. This could rival that Washington-Oregon game. I could see it. But I think Georgia wins.
I think I would take Bama plus 5.5, but I probably think Georgia wins. I just don't think I think Georgia's really good. I just don't think they're as dominant as years past. So like they could definitely give up a loss. Like I really do think that. And to be completely honest with you, like I'm kind of ready to see Georgia not make the playoffs for a year. I mean, for so many years it was like Alabama, but it's been a few years now since Alabama's made it. Like I'd almost rather see Alabama. But what I'm afraid about if Alabama does win, that both teams will still make the playoffs. And it's like I really don't want to see both teams make the playoffs. I only want to see one team out of the SEC. So maybe it's like, I don't know. I don't know how I want to go about that one.
Is that what you're hearing though? If Georgia loses close, are they still in?
Given the SEC bias, like I could see it.
Their schedule is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not.
I hope not. I agree, but that's a good point. That would
especially
scare me too.
Like let's say like Bama only wins by 3. Like I could see them being like, "Whoa, Georgia's still good."
Oh, God.
They've proven that they've been good. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, true.
And then Florida State, Louisville. We obviously talked about this before. Now I watched a little bit of that Kentucky Louisville game from last week because I bet that game, and that was a bad loss at home. I know it's kind of an in-state rival, but it's like Kentucky's not good this year. They're barely bowl eligible. So like Florida State had their quarterback, they would, I think, easily win this game. I'm cheering so hard for Louisville. I want them to win so bad because I just do not want to see Florida State in there.
100%. I go Cards. I think their rush defense is like tops in the country. They have a really good running. They run the ball really good. I think maybe they were. I don't know if they were looking ahead to this game last week or what the deal was. They should have beaten Kentucky, and obviously they didn't play great at all. I don't know. I think Louisville will actually win, but who knows? This game's kind of a toss-up too.
I think it's going to be a lot better / a lot closer now with the backup quarterback for Florida State than it would have been. And they've had a good season. I'm give it to Jeff Brom. I mean, the ex-Purdue coach. I mean, he's done a good job turning that program around. But I don't know. And then obviously we already talked about Iowa, Michigan, so we don't really need to get into this game. But yeah, so the conference championship games, those are it. It's going to be a fun weekend of watching some of these games, and I'm really excited for that Friday night game. And then like the Tulane Liberty game, I think that game is going to be better. I know it's not going to get much of a talking point, but when you talk about whoever wins that game is going to make it to a New Year's Six bowl, like that's a big game. And I think that game, I'm going to look right now, is on Friday as well. I'm almost positive here.
A lot of great games. A lot of high stakes.
Tulane plays SMU. I'm sorry. Liberty's playing someone else.
Oh, SMU.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's what it was. I was trying to figure out if Liberty or if it was SMU that was in. So never mind on that.
Yeah, just like I said, just high stakes in these games. I mean, it determines who's basically in the playoffs and who's not. for a lot of these teams and situations. And obviously I'm looking forward. Obviously you'll be down in Indy, cheering on the Hawks and also watching some football. I'll be back at home, just sitting on my ass on the couch
and watching football,
drinking some beers and watching a ton of football this weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
We'll both have great weekends, that's for sure. So, well, let's hope for an Iowa dub or at least a close game. And we'll be back on probably Sunday. I'll be coming back from Indy, but maybe we can crank one out maybe Sunday night. If not, we can always wait, a day or two after. But transfer portal going to be, a lot of news coming out there, because I guarantee you after the game on Saturday, there's going to be some, as the next week kind of rolls around, guys leaving, some potential guys coming in. Hopefully sooner rather than later, we start figuring out who our OC is going to be. So we have a lot. I mean, we can't just end this podcast because there's going to be a lot of news, different things coming out the next month or two, along with obviously the bowl game. That's going to be more than likely taking place on January 1st, because I think regardless, if we lose, we're going to make this Citrus Bowl. And if we somehow won, we'd probably play on January 1st in a New Year's Six Bowl. So, let's just hope for the best, I guess. So, well, that will do it for this episode. We will be back next week. Thank you guys all for listening. Have a good rest of your week, and go Hawks.